Bom dia a todas, todos e todes. Está começando pelo canal do
Good morning,
YouTube.
ladies and gentlemen. So we are starting by the YouTube this webinar. This is going to be the first of the three online events to debate the speed topic in the streets and also in urban areas. We know that this webinar is being attended by technicians in Brazil, Latin America, and other countries of English language. And while we give everybody else 2 minutes to connect, I am going to introduce myself and speak a little bit of what I expect of the event today and the following. My name is Ana Carboni. I'm here representing the UCB, our union, and the Rodas da Paz Association. UCB is an organization of our civil society created in 2007 of national activities and unites local activities with people and organizations that promote bicycle as a transportation means, also for leisure and sports. Rodas da Paz is associated to the union and was one of the organizations that created it. And it's also a civil society organization created in 2003 with the goal to react to the growing number of occurrence of violence and deaths, specifically in the Federal District of Brazil, and since then been working and promoting peaceful, sustainable mobility as everybody's right. I am currently the general coordinator and representative of the Midwest region in our regional council. I make the most of the opportunity to comment why we are discussing the surveillance of speed limits. We have a national traffic legislation, which is recognized at the WHO as very interesting, but needs to be updated regarding specifically the speed limits. We approved in 2018 a federal law that created a national plan of reducing deaths and injuries in traffic to reduce in half as a target up to 2028, and there is a series of actions to be met. Unfortunately, since 2019, we've been seeing an increase the number of deaths and injuries in traffic. So we, unfortunately, have seen this, but we are still struggling to meet these targets. And a way to update the code, it has two specific measurements. The first one is to review the speed limits allowed by the federal legislation and adjust it to the recommended by the WHO. The second is the regulation of the surveillance of speed limits. So these two measurements are seen as structuring so that we manage to make progress in reducing the death tolls in our streets and our roads. The update of the legislation is a responsibility of the Brazilian parliament. So a group of organizations of civil society has put together a proposal, a bid, number 2789-2023, specifically for the updates of these topics in our legislation. They already included. So this group is made of currently 60 supporting organizations, and we are one of them, Rota da Paz, WRI, Instituto Holanda, Caminhabilidade, Abranet, amongst others. And to find out more about these bids, we created a website with all the information, And we're going to invite you to look at this website that we're going to be putting in the chat. So after this brief introduction, and now that we have more people connected to us, we go back to our seminar about the surveillance topic. So we're going to have 3 webinars organized by the National Observatory Cicloviárias. I apologize, but we're getting some interference. There's some microphones open. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize, but I cannot hear the speaker anymore. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, but we're not getting the audio from the speaker. All the data will have the same numbers, and it's going to be made available in the YouTube video and the chat as well, so you can access it. Then we're going to be speaking about some experience in Poland. Again, gentlemen, we have issues with the audio from the speaker. I'm very sorry. We're having some leaks in the audio, so I cannot hear the speaker.
Em vias de velocidade máxima abaixo de 50 km por hora e mesmo em vias compartilhadas com pedestres e ciclistas. Nós estamos aqui
So we're here today with Lucas Melo, Marcin Flieger, GRSP, and Global Road Safe Partnership. In this partnership with road safety. Again, gentlemen, we're having serious issues with the audio from the speaker. Gentlemen, if somebody could let the speaker know that we're having issues with the audio.
Se quiser fazer alguma, por favor, registre no chat que nós olharemos. Lembrando que teremos 2 chats hoje, um pelo Zoom, para quem está acompanhando com a tradução simultânea em inglês-português, e o outro pelo YouTube, direto em português. Passamos então a palavra para o Lucas. O Lucas Melo é estudante de doutorado em Engenharia de Transporte na Universidade de São Paulo. Ele é consultor da Ciclocidade, responsável pela análise dos dados de fiscalização automática da cidade. Também trabalha para SP Trans como analista de dados e pesquisa. No doutorado, a mudança de comportamentos de viagens e políticas públicas.
Bom dia a todos, pessoal. Muito obrigado pelo convite. É um prazer estar aqui.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Gentlemen, I strongly apologize. We have issues with the audio. In this first study that was developed by the Ciclocidades, we analyzed all the different data of radar and motorized vehicles in the city. And this project is within the project incidents to avoid the threats in the national standards of road safety and to build the surveillance of average speed in Brazil. A little bit about what we're going to present now. So we're going to present a little bit of the context and the goal of this study, the data characteristics, the approach that we use to assess them, and mainly the results. So we divide into the data per radar and how they can damage or benefit the calculation of the average median speeds and the data for the sections of the corridors in São Paulo. And our final remarks of how we managed to assess all this data. So Ana has already spoken a little bit about the context. However, in this first study, we have the first hypothesis, which is the fact that the means speeds, the surveillance avoids that the motorist behavior to is slowing down when we have control. However, the analysis of the means speeds, does it make sense to implement this kind of control in the urban areas? Because we have many different factors that will influence on the motorist speeds, like the amount of traffic lights, the congestions, getting in and getting out to the roads. This makes the motorists during the day to be very careful to the city movements. So the main goal of this first study was to do explanatory analysis of the electronic surveillance in São Paulo to point out from the empiric assessments of the motorist behavior more potential places for the implementation of this surveillance by means speeds. We have the data for 2019 because we'd like to later on to cross this data with other sources, such as accidents, the reports on volume and speeds created by our agencies. So with these 5 years, we have two main issues. The first one was the pandemic, which compromised the motorists' behavior. And also after the pandemics, we have in town a loss in this data and problems in generating these reports. So for being careful, we went back to 2019 pre-pandemic context to analyze this user's behavior. Just for us to be on the same page, what do we mean by mean speed surveillance? So when we learn the physics cinematics, we calculate this speed, which is actually the interval of delta of the space about delta time. But in practice, how do we calculate this? Imagine that a certain vehicle will go past the first radar, and after this, we have the time, and as it goes after a second radar, the time is also registered. So we have this interval between the same vehicle going through two different radars. So we have this distance between radars, which makes it possible to calculate the mean speeds in this section. So the potential benefits that we thought about in controlling the mean speeds, number one is to have a better control of the automobiles' speeds in a greater section of the roads. Imagine that we have a long 5, 6, 7, 8 kilometers road with different speed surveillance devices, but only in 8 of these we would have this control. So with the mean speeds, we could have a better control in all these corridors. So we avoid this deceleration of the speeds in between the radars. So by doing so, we understand that we will improve the road safety within these corridors. Looking at the data to the left, we can see how these entries are made within the devices. It's a code. Every single one you have alphanumeric code with its own meaning. It identifies the batch of the bidding process. We have the date and the time, the local code, exactly where the radar is located at. We also have the lane on the road that device is taking notes of the different vehicles. Then we have another code about whether or not there was an infraction. Then we managed to identify the car's license plate, the type of vehicles, if it's a motorcycle, if it's a car, if it's a truck. Then we have the speeds at that specific spot, meters per second, and the bidding of the city of São Paulo radars. They already demanded a field specifically for the means speeds. However, as there are no specific legislations or no decision by the authorities on the calculation of these mean speeds, they will come as zero. Just for you to have a little bit of the scale of this analysis, we managed to get the gross data of these radars since when in 2022, 3.5 terabytes of raw data and a total of 500 gigabytes in 2019. So we needed to do a huge treatment of this data in order to do this analysis. So where are they located, this radar? To the right, we have a map with 883 active radars and 129 able to do the surveillance of the excess of speeds. We have a concentration of radars in the expanded city center in between both marginal avenues, the Pinheiro and the Tietê avenues. However, we saw that we had less amounts of radars in regions where we have high density of dwellers, like the east and south zones of São Paulo. The method that we use to analyze this data, we went through 4 phases. The first one was the cleaning of this data bank. Actually, they were not as organized as we would like to, and we had to do the cleaning to remove out some pieces of equipment. So we used the outliers removal based on the intervals by excluding the data of the radars that had been working for a few days during the year, and for the reminders, we also had to exclude the days where we have very low volumes, indicating that that day the equipment had some issues, technical issues, so there are some gaps in identifying the problems and doing the maintenance work. So we identified and excluded out those specific devices. The second phase of our method, we define some roads and sections, and we did the sequencing for the radars. And through a physical continuity amongst these sectors. So we did it in order to simplify the analysis, because for us to be able to characterize these corridors. And these were actually our third phase, where we did the following phases. We grouped together the equipment in the same transversion section. Imagine that you have a certain sector where we have a surveillance spot and different devices for different lanes. So we group them together in just one spot, and only one key or code, and we presume this would be a surveillance pole. So this facilitates that number one, you have a car that's going through lane number one, and the same car will go on lane 3 in the second spot. So if we grouped everything together, this would facilitate the identification of vehicles, even if they change lanes. Then for each sector, we had grouping sequencing per way of the road's flow and calculated the distance between these sectors. And then finally, we crossed these definitions of the sectors with the radar data themselves. Once we had the distance between these devices, we managed to calculate the average speeds. And the exploratory analysis we define in the characteristics that can be improved for improving the surveillance for means speed, and then we demonstrated the results achieved. A general view identified 28 sectors, and we only analyzed 23 of them because some of them were excluded out after some adjustments in the location of the radars. So basically, these are either arterials or express roads. For the sides, we have here the flow of vehicles during the year. In another devices, we have 34.8 million entries in the year, which is an average 95,000 a day, bringing all the lanes together. One of the things that we identified is this electronic surveillance in the city of São Paulo as a huge failure to identify the type of vehicles, whether it's a car, motorcycle, bus, truck. We crossed this data with the CET data about the volumes and speeds, and we saw that the mode participation of the motorcycle was much lower in this surveillance rather than what we identified in the CET field research. However, when we classify these vehicles in light or heavy, the sorting is very close to what the field analysis was. Some problems that we have for the speed calculation when we analyze the data. First of all, we had a lot of different consecutive data without working simultaneously in a lot of days of the year. For instance, we had radar number one that worked in May, 8th May, but the next one did not work in this day. So they did not have simultaneous functioning. So this was one of the main issues that we had that complicates a lot the calculation because we should not have the entries for that sector in that specific days for the consecutive radars. Also, the high number of lack of entries for the cars license plates. In our investigations, we had some meetings with producers and people who work with surveillance, and they said that two types of effects that can lead to this, and three failure, like heavy rain, fraud, the solar angle, the drivers changing lane as they go through the surveillance spots. So all these variables can influence a lot. However, we also have the internal effects, which is the equipment failures themselves. If we have an average of all the radars that we assess, 76.8% of them identify the license plates correctly, but the bidding demands that the radars will have a performance of at least 81%. So only 41% of the radars would have this performance. All other 59% were under 81%. And now we have the sectors results. So the first one connecting to what we just mentioned, which is the loss of entries due to the device failures, and also because the motor is not always keeping the same lane. So they can have the license fired in the first, but not the second, as he left the lane. So in the graphs here, we can see in the X, we have the percentage in green for the first and in orange for the second radar for every sector. So basically, none of them will reach over 50%. Very low, very low. And all this will damage. Imagine the number of people will cause damage. Imagine the number of people that go through these radars. How, if we're going to treat the average speeds, would be only be speaking about a low percentage that can actually be calculated. Now, looking at the analysis, we're going to have three examples of sectors with three different characteristics. The first one is the Jacu-Pêssego Avenue, which is expressway. Specific in the beginning and the end, they are expressways with very similar features of the different roads. When we look at the graphs, the speed access percentage in blue and orange, we have the entries of accessible speeds without the safety margin of 7 kilometers an hour demanded by law, but we demonstrated both percentages. So for instance, if we have a maximum speed limit of 50 kilometers an hour, there is a safety margin of 7 kilometers an hour due to the device calculation. So it's only going to be considered as an infraction if it goes over 57 kilometers an hour. So we have the percentages of the entries that were identified in blue in the initial and orange in the final radar for the sector, and in red with the excess of mean speeds. So this high percentage that we have were in the sectors where we have this more road feature, and the 3, 4, and 5 sectors, we still have a higher percentage of mean speeds, however, more urban feature. The second one is the East Radio, which is a very complex sector. It has various different lanes and it goes down to 2. Some sectors will have very intense mix lane use, others not. When we use the same graph, in these more express sectors, we have a higher percentage of excess, lower than Jacu-Pêssego in magnitude, but much lower than the punctual ones. And even in those more urban sectors, with more land use intensity, even though we have a higher percentage. A third segment here, we have an arterial road, Rebouças Avenue, with different features. Basically, 2 lanes for automobiles. We have the bus lane as well. A lot of land use, traffic lights, and we look at the results, the excess of speeds, punctual one at the beginning and the end of every segment, similar to the means speeds. Okay, but we looked at the means of the day. What about if we broke down into time? Because we have the congestions effects. If we look at the time spots to the left, we have the total absolute numbers of speeding for main speeds concentrated at late nights. We have the entries for each segment with a high volume in morning peak, then evening, afternoon peak. However, the excess is during late night. So the volume of cars also influence. So the late night is a critical sport to control the speed limits here. So we've seen a lot of different accidents have been happening here at these times, late nights. At the end of our publication, we have a summary of all the different segments that were assessed in the last 4 columns. We give us a good picture of these segments. We speak about this incidence of excess of speed limits. Exceeding the speed limits, we have the level of incidence of these infractions in the corridors, the time of the day that we have the higher occurrence, and last some remarks about the times. So what do we manage to get out of this work? First of all, we can highlight the need in increase in the demand levels with respect to the functioning of these devices. So to improve the identification rates, identify the types of vehicles as well, because for the analysis, it is important not only to identify the vehicles that we have more cases of exceeding speed limits and also guarantee the simultaneous functioning of consecutive radars with respect to the access of mean speeds in the segments with the more roads features. We have more incidents. In the arterial roads, we have the daytimes due to the number of vehicles. So actually, to conclude, there are some indications that the empirical data, first of all, that the motorists actually have this behavior of slowing down, coming closer to radars, and in fact, the surveillance by means speeds can be some complements of controlling speeds in the urban soil. Specifically in roads, there are more express ones, and at the times where we have less vehicles on the roads. Thank you very much. And I'll be happy to entertain your questions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Obrigada, Lucas. A gente teve problema com o áudio no início da transmissão. Eu vou voltar pouco para a apresentação
We
inicial.
did have some issues with the audio beginning of my talk, so I'll ask everybody's patience, please.
Marcin, Maciej e Damian,
To Martin then, so we can again bring this message back to everyone else because we had problems with the audio. I'm also going to be doing a brief presentation of the Ciclocidades. We are a civil society, non-profit organization. Our mission is to contribute towards a more sustainable city based on the equal access to rights, promoting the use of bicycle as a tool of transformation. The Ciclocidade. We also have the Urban Association of Cycle Users in São Paulo, created in 2009, being organized from the union of different acting citizens defending the bicycle mode that notice the need of having a representative entity to increase their individual work reach. This is a little bit about us. And then going back a little bit about what I had already said at the beginning of my presentation, I'm here representing the Roda das Pais and UCB. Both Ciclocidade and Roda das Pais are associated to UCB, and we represent these associations that have the local activity. And why are we here speaking about surveillance by mean speeds? Our Brazilian legislation is advanced according to the WHO, but we need to have it updated. Now we have a bid at the Brazilian Parliament that suggests some changes that are already part of our national plan of reducing the death toll and injuries for this new bid. And the focus is to update our Brazilian legislation, which is good in many different areas. However, it's still a problem regarding the speed limits. So this still needs to improve. So the first review that we have in the national plan to reduce injuries and deaths in our roads is to reduce down the legal speed limits to have them adjusted to the WHO, and also the implementation of the surveillance by means and speeds. So this webinar will be divided in 3 different webinars that will debate on this issue. And this bid that's now at the Parliament was suggested by a group of different non-profitable civil society organizations, and amongst them, we, UCB, WRI, the Foundation Colônia Institute, Caminhabilidade Institute, Abranet, amongst others. And we have already put in the YouTube chat the link with all the information available for those of you who want to check on it. And this webinar has been organized by Ciclocidade and National Observatory of Road Safety. I hope I have summarized the information that I gave at the beginning that unfortunately was committed because we had some issues in Portuguese and of course in the translation as well because the audio was not clear. So the different webinars that we're gonna have, the second is gonna be on May the 22nd with respect to the challenges and the pilot projects that we did in Brazil, the experience in Portugal as well. And the third one in June will be about the urban cities in the countries that are using this kind of surveillance in avenues that are using speed limits no lower than 50 kilometers per hour and streets that are shared with pedestrians and bicycles. Now I'll pass the floor to Martin. Martin, please, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Anna. Let me share my screen. I hope you can hear me well. Okay, I think that you can see my screen right now. So good morning, bom dia, everyone. So my name is Marcin Flieger. I'm working for the Global Road Safety Partnership, as you know. So together with my colleagues from Poland, we will present some international experiences related to the use of the automated speed enforcement, the section control, in fact. So, okay, I try to change my slide. Okay, so as an introduction, I would like to make some general comments about the speed enforcement, because based on the good international experience, definitely to use the both type of the tactics, which is the physical policing and automated enforcement, is the most recommended and most successful way to enforce the speed limits. So we have two types of the speed enforcement. The one is the physical policing, where police officers, traffic agents are using the handheld devices, and after detecting the speeder, the stop operation is conducted immediately. And the automated enforcement, where device record the offenses, and then the relevant procedures to punish the offenders is implemented. So in terms of the automated enforcement, we have like two main elements. The first one is the regular speed cameras, which are controlling the speed in the specific points. I mean the fixed cameras or the mobile cameras, and of course the section control devices. So because Lucas already explained how the average control systems work, so I will not go into the details, because it was very, very well and very clear explained by Lucas in the previous presentation. So international experiences shows that this type of speed enforcement, the average speed enforcement section control, is very effective on the certain type of the roads, where is the one constant speed limit and the possibility to entering and exiting the section covered by this system is very limited. So this approach can avoid and should avoid some issues what also Lucas mentioned before. And also, before I will pass the microphone to my colleagues from Poland, I would like also share with you some general comments about some issues, topics, what should be considered for the section control speed enforcement. So definitely there are the few elements, not only links with the technology, which is, in my opinion, the last element of the entire chain of works, but the first, it should be the good and relevant legislation, and of course the will to conduct this, to implement this kind of enforcement, and the legal base what allows to implement and use effectively the section control systems. Another element is related to the section control, site control, and selection of the areas, the section on the roads where average speed cameras will be installed, and then also the good database related to the registered vehicles, the owners of the vehicles, what is necessary to effectively use the data and information recorded by the cameras, like the system to manage the offenses. And the very important element, and we saw on the Lucas presentation, it's São Paulo works very well, is the database. I mean the collecting, gathering the data and information from the cameras to analyze the effectiveness, and also to monitoring the influence of those cameras for the road safety. So those few slides, what I already presented, is a kind of introduction to the main part of this presentation, which is to present the international example and experiences from the automated speed enforcement and the section controls. So now I would like to ask and hand over to my colleagues from Poland, from the Center for Automatic Traffic Enforcement, to Maciej and to Damian to continue the presentation. So guys, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Maciej Tyburcy here. I'm a specialist in the General Inspectorate of Road Transport, and I work in the Center for Automatic Traffic Enforcement. With me is Damian Wiktorzak, who is the principal, the director of this bureau, of the Center for Automatic Traffic Enforcement. And we would like to tell you about our job and also specifically about the average speed section control. So next slide, please, Marcin. A brief history of our bureau. The road transport inspection was created basically in order to control heavy traffic. But in 2010, we have gained additional legal powers. We were allowed to control drivers exceeding speed limit and disobeying traffic signals using fixed devices, such as speed cameras and other devices, but for the time being, we didn't have any. Our first devices were those that we acquired from police and road managers of different type. And as you can see, in the beginning, we had about 100 devices and 4,500 places where we were able to use them. But also here, there's an important information that now we need to have exactly the same number of devices and places in which we can use our devices. We cannot use one devices in 5 places on a, let's say, rotational manner, that it works 1 week here, another week over there. Now we have to put our devices in one spot for all the time. Another important information is that in the beginning, we had no means of wireless communication with our devices, so everything had to be done manually. And also the data that we got was very limited because it was only the raw data from the speed camera, which wasn't always, but basically it was never up to our requirements. But soon after creation of CANARD, we launched public tenders in order to buy new devices that were up to, let's say, the task. And from that time, we had already performed several tenders, and now our fleet is much bigger. So Marcin, please, next slide. Right now we have almost 600 devices around the country. Still, the main devices are traditional fixed speed cameras. We have 470 of those. We have 43 red light devices that control different intersections, and we are still waiting for the delivery of 7 additional. We have 4 red light devices for railroad crossings and 72 section speed control. And this is the part of our equipment that is the fastest growing in percentage. As you can see on the right, we are currently in the process of another public tenders in which we aim to buy 70 fixed speed cameras, up to 60 section speed control devices, and 10 devices of red light. So another, please. So as I said before, we have 3 types of devices: spot speed measurement, section speed measurement, and red light. I will not go into detail. This is just a little bit of showing how they work. Yes. So Marcin, could we have the next one? This is also the example of the devices, fixed speed devices that we have. They work based on the Doppler effect. They are radar devices, and we can use them in spots that are that have very high risk of traffic accidents. They are very good devices, but they have some limitations. They cannot be used in tunnels. They cannot be, and they also cover just a small fraction of a road, because drivers, when they see a speed camera, they of course slow down. But unfortunately, often when they pass the device, they speed up again. Next slide, please. That's why we are using section speed control. Those devices can measure speed on long sections of road and allow us to increase safety on a larger distances. For example, we would have to put 10 speed cameras, fixed speed cameras, but we can use just one section speed control to have the same effect, which is very much more cost efficient. The next slide, please. Here we have the principle in which the section speed control works, but as it has been covered before, so I won't go into detail regarding this. Next one, please. In Poland, we have different categories of roads, national roads, and let's say regional roads of different importance. In the beginning, we were focused on installing those devices on the most dangerous places, and we were finding those places with the help of universities and information from the police, as well as from some road managers. But now we are focusing a little bit more on the national roads. National roads are roads that connect, let's say, different parts of the country. They are of national importance. They do not. They also carry the biggest traffic, and they are often the most dangerous, simply because there's the most of cars on those roads. Okay, the next one, please. Right now, out of those 72 devices, we have 50 devices on national roads, and well, 2 of those are currently being redeployed. We have 5 devices on the highways and 8 devices on motorways. On voivodeship roads, we have 18 devices. So as you can see, the biggest, the most important categories have the most devices. I don't know if you are aware, but in Poland, we are still in the process of constructing our network of highways and motorways. So we weren't able to install our devices up to this time in large numbers because the roads were often in construction. But now we want to focus on the highways, on motorways, in cooperation with the administrative body that governs them, which is the General Directorate for highways and motorways. As you can see now, the average length of section speed control is almost 4 kilometers, but we will soon increase this number because we are, as I said, going onto highways, motorways, and there are sections of the road that we'll control will be on average 10 kilometers, give or take. We will have sections that will be 17, 18 kilometers, but also a little bit shorter, 3 kilometers between important road crossings on highways. Here I would also like to state that Polish law puts some limitations onto us. That is maximal legal length of section that we can control is 10 kilometers in urban area and 20 kilometers outside of the urban area.
No, espérate.
So we are in the process of buying 60 up to 60 additional speed section controls. We have determined 90 localizations that we will put in the tender. And as you can see, out of those 90, 60 are on motorways and on highways. And this is the sections of road that will have the highest priority. Yes, so next slide, please. Using section control gives us large advantages. For example, we can use it in tunnels. As I said before, Doppler devices cannot be used in such conditions because of the wave reflection. Our National Road Managing Authority has already asked us to cooperate in installing devices in 3 tunnels and asked us to install one on another tunnel that is being built. Another advantage is, of course, the length of the road that we can cover with this device. One speed section control costs, let's say, 3-4 times as much as one traditional speed camera, fixed speed camera, and it can cover up to, let's say, 20 times bigger area of longer section of road. We assume that in Poland, because we have to put road signs warning the drivers that attention, speed camera ahead, drivers slow down when they see the sign, and then they unfortunately speed up after the speed camera. But let's say fixed speed camera increases safety on 1 kilometer of road. So here we have, for example, 20 kilometers, or at least 15. Of course, in order to use those devices effectively, we should follow some rules. First of all, legal rules. Polish law requires that there has to be constant speed limit on the entire section of the road. So there can be no changes in speed limit on the road. Sometimes it's hard to find, it's hard to install maybe such a device because there are some limitations, but we can work around it with road authorities. And another important question is, of course, finding power source, electricity on highways and on motorways. Sometimes we would like to install a device on a section of road, but there is a little bit of problem with finding electricity nearby. Also, when installing speed section control, we should avoid road crossings or pedestrian crossings or street lights, but it's not absolute. There are situations when there are no, let's say, big differences in traffic with those crossings. There's not a lot of pedestrians, and the road lights are used only after road light changes only after pushing the button by a pedestrian. So it's not that we cannot use speed devices in such circumstances. Okay, next slide, please. Here, we would like to show you the efficiency of our system. This is information regarding crashes, injured people and killed people before and after we have installed our devices. So as you can see, number of crashes has dropped significantly, but of course the most important part is number of people that have died in road accidents. 97% less people dead in those places where we have installed our devices. So there's less accidents, and those accidents that do happen are much less severe. On next few slides, we have some examples regarding our let's say improvement in road safety. Stalowa Wola Jamnica, this is a good example. This is a regional road that goes through a forest, and people are often speeding, going from one town to another. Local authorities ask us to install such a device, and as you can see, after installation, the number of crashes and injured people has dropped significantly, and there have been no people dead. It's also important to point out that we are now the only, except for police, the only body in Poland that can use fixed speed cameras. Of course, police, they are focused on physical stopping of the drivers, whereas we take care of automatic surveillance. So it happens that local authorities ask us to participate in installation of such a device. And in such a cooperation, we have installed a few devices, just like Stalowa Wola. Also, we cooperate with highway authority, but with them, there's a little bit of different cooperation. Okay, next slide, please. So this is another example of the number of accidents that has been reduced. Another, please. This is an interesting case. This is a road in Warsaw, in the capital of Poland, the biggest city of Poland. And as you can see, there are still crashes happening, but still the number has dropped, and the number of people injured has also dropped. Okay, next one, please. This is the number of offenses per road type. As you can see, in 2021, we have a huge amount of offenses from highways. This is because we have launched cooperation with highway authority to install our devices on roads that are under construction or are being rebuilt into, let's say, roads of higher class. They were normal roads, and now there are highways. They asked us to help them because people weren't obeying the speed limit. Police had problems controlling speed on those roads because there was permanent traffic. So there was no, if they could basically chase one driver, then they would have to go 30, 40 kilometers to find a spot where they could pull over and hand the driver a ticket for speeding. So it was very time consuming and not really efficient. In cooperation with us, as you can see, we were able to catch a lot of violators and increase safety on this road type. In the next year, it has dropped to 0 simply because the road construction was finished. But now we are entering back on highways. And as you can see, the numbers are already quite significant. If we take under consideration that there are really just 5 devices on highways out of total of 72. Yes, so this is a little bit more information about cooperation with different road administrators. As I said, tunnels are now a very popular topic. Tunnels are expensive to build. Every incident that happens inside a tunnel is potentially very dangerous. That's why Highway Authority, National Road Authority, they ask us to help them and focus on those newly built tunnels in order to calm down the traffic. And from my own experience, I can tell you that I'm using one of those tunnels, and the traffic there is always very calm and very law obeying. Okay, next one. This is example of how we put our cameras. So they can be put either on some beams that we install on the side of the road, but they can also use existing infrastructure. And they can also be mounted directly to the walls of tunnels. It all depends on the situation on the road and also on the cooperation with the road authority. There's basically only cameras, and of course there has to be a computer nearby, but computer isn't big. You can see it on the picture on the upper left, in the upper left corner. It's hanging on the beam. On the left, it's a gray box. So we have such infrastructure on the entrance, another at the exit. There's camera, there are infrared lamps that allow us to make photos in which we see the face of the driver, and the computer. And this is basically it. And 24 hours per day, 7 days a week, we receive information from those devices. Also, we receive information when there's something wrong with them. Although people don't, let's say, vandalize them. Our fixed speed cameras happen to be from time to time under attack, but speed section control was only once. It has been damaged on purpose. In other cases, it was just as an accident. Some car had an accident and hit our beam. Okay, the next one. Okay, so Marcin, I think this is back to you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, thank you, Maciej, for very detailed information about the section control systems in Poland, and what is especially most important, the effectiveness of this system, because we all could see the significant progress and improvement of the road safety situation. So I'm conscious about the time, so I will not go a lot through those slides, but definitely the final comment from my side is definitely the section control is one of the most effective speed enforcement system what can change the road user behavior. And not only from Poland, but also from other countries who use this system, we have a lot of strong evidences about this. So I'm pretty sure that this system can change the road user behavior. So I would like to stop now, and I will stop my presentation. So thank you, Anna, for opportunity to present it. And if there is any questions, I know that we are out of time completely, but if there are any questions after that presentation, we are happy to reply. If not verbally right now, we can reply via email on the written version later on. So thank you very much. Molto obrigado. So thank you.
Obrigada. Agradeço muito aos colegas poloneses, né, por essa apresentação.
Thank you very much to the colleagues. Initially, due to the time, I did not introduce each one of them, so I will briefly do it now. Marcin, he entered the GRI in 2017 as a project manager of road capacity and oversee the projects in different parts of the world. Maciej Tyburcy works for the Center of Automatic Surveillance, GRCD, and is also responsible for the acquirements and cooperation of external parties. Damian, sorry for the pronunciation, has 12-year experience in management and from the beginning of his career working for the General Inspector of Transportation Authority. It was a brief introduction of the colleagues from Poland that just presented to us. Thank you very much for the participation. And we have a question here. Dante Rosado from Vital Strategies is asking the following. So the time you enter the license place is very important. São Paulo, how is the hour defined and updated for the São Paulo representatives? Well, maybe Flávio can help me out. I did not attend the meeting that we had with the folks from the equipment companies. Well, Lucas, I just wanted very briefly ask you to speak a little bit the next steps of the research now once it's been published. If you have anything else. Well, next step, try to cross this data together with the crash data and also check more data crossing with volume and speed for us to see how systemic these data are. So we only crossed some of the data for very few segments, and then we've seen a huge discrepancy in the identification of the type of vehicles, especially the motorcycles, and we are trying to find more evidence so that the average speed limit control can be related to safety, to road safety. Well, Dante, I do not have the answer for you now, but I will definitely get back to you about it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lucas. We have a question from YouTube to the colleague from Poland, but the question is, what do you think with respect to some educational ads that show crash cars in the ads? Do you think they could influence on motorists reducing down once they see these images and pictures? Not sure if they're still with us.
I think they are, but sorry, can we have this question once again? Sorry, could you repeat?
O que vocês acham?
So what's your guys' opinion about showing some crashes, cars with their images on some TV ads as educational? Do you think they could influence on the motorist behavior towards reducing down the speed once they see this image of crashed cars.
Sorry, if this is question to us, we don't have the translation and we don't speak Portuguese. So if we could have it in English, please.
Okay,
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
Maybe I will try to reply for that question, because it's rather the general question in terms of the some educational elements. So there is the different opinion on that, about some let's say drastic videos showing, or drastic publications showing the crashes and how it can change the road user behavior. I don't remember exactly right now when a kind of report exactly about this topic was published, that this kind of publications with the drastic photos, drastic videos showing the crashes can change the road user behavior and can, let's say, go deeper into the mind of the road user, showing the results and effects of the wrong behavior on the roads. I think it's rather the question to the psychologists to check it. But let me check this report, and I'm happy to share with you if I found it in my files.
Let me just clarify. The report says that it can or it can't.
It can.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to translate for the YouTubers so people understand.
Thank you, Anna.
The reply. Então, eles responderam, né, dizendo que essas fotos.
So basically, they said that these drastic images of videos of photos, there is a report that's been written, and Marcin is going to check on it and try to get back to us regarding the answer of the motorists once they see this. And this is actually an issue to be answered by psychologists rather than people who are experts in traffic. But he understands that it might have an impact in the behavior. We will check on the report and get back to us. I believe we have no more time, unfortunately. So once again, thank you very much for your cooperation, for your time, for your attention, for your participation. That's it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.